So thanks for having me here. I'm gonna focus on just this project I actually started 12 years ago, a little bit more than 12 years ago, with my friends and artists Eva and Franco Mattes, and we still run it together. Actually, this is the first poster. I brought a few of them, a couple of them there, if you want to take them. So the influencers, by the way, it's the name is weird now. Sounds really weird. Back then, it sounded like the title for a tacky Hollywood movie about something I don't know about. That was weird enough for us. It was good enough for us. But then, you know, almost 13 years ago, when we actually thought of this name, the word was pretty different. I mean, YouTube did not exist yet. Just so you have an idea of how old we are. And yeah, no. So just a few images of posters. Yeah, this is funny because we don't just invite speakers to showcase their work, their experiments in art and communication, but sometimes we build things, and we actually built this guillotine. It worked. We made a test within the Center of Contemporary Culture. They didn't know about it because otherwise they would have freaked out, but we did it and it worked, and actually we sold it, something like that. Oh, this is another poster. It created some sort of a drama, the CCCB at the Center of Contemporary Culture, because, as you can see, there was no logo here, no sponsors. What will they do? They will withdraw the money. But then we showed them that actually this poster was not just a weird thing with this, troll face on it, which was weird enough already, but that you could actually wear it and become troll face yourself. You can break this, and so we won their trust after we showed this that it was fun. So, okay, but this was not meant to. This is the last edition's poster. So, what is the Influences about? It's about experiments in art and communication. We have a number of subtitles. They're like oxymora. Some sort of nonsense. I'm not gonna get into this. Basically, it's a festival about experiments in performing media, in being media, in performing data in one way or another. Of course, performing media means a lot of different things. For example, here we had a speaker in the very first edition of the festival, Joey Skaggs, sort of the godfather of hoaxing media. Feeding media with false identities, with fake news, and fooling them, and then exposing them. This was an old scenario. Of course, media are still around, like traditional hierarchical media are still around, so it's still valid somehow. Probably less and less in the Google or Wikipedia or Instagram era or Twitter era. But back then in the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, this was a way of being part of a social machinery, because that's what media and communication are, Performing the media, for us, and for the artists we try, and the activists we try to invite to bring over to Barcelona, performing the media means being part of this machinery. Being part of it, changing it, breaking it, sabotaging it, hacking it. And the output, because this machinery is so much bigger than you. It's totally irrelevant what you're doing. But still, worst case scenario, you're building a story, a nice little myth that you can tell people, and probably they will get inspired. Worst case scenario. So this is just a very short example of some of the speakers that we invited to Barcelona, totalitarian artists from Yugoslavia, superheroes from Mexico City, mixing up fiction and reality. What's the boundary between fiction and reality, and how fiction can actually turn reality upside down? Impostorship as activism, the yes man, a preacher, a post-religious preacher. We actually went into a Starbucks here in Barcelona and then into a Deutsche Bank, doing some sort of weird performances all together in a very cheesy and improvised way, but still, you're actually inserting fiction into the so-called reality and see what happens. From Argentina, Oscar Brahim, someone that actually a taxi driver, then he was just like cutting up all the images he found on the street. He stored in the trunk of his car, of his cab actually, and at night he actually made compositions with all these paper cuts from actual ads, billboards. And it became another type of billboard. Large-scale hoaxes. This is Prague, Český sen, the Czech dream, a fake hypermarket. Again, the Czech Republic, some artist called Stohoven actually tapped into this very stupid, landscape TV program and inserted a nuclear explosion on a Sunday morning, and something interesting happened after that. But then you realize that things can get more and more complicated. And at this point, when we invited Trevor Paglen, that someone may know, back in 2008, I guess, or 9, I don't remember, we started to realize that some shift was happening. We were very much interested in being, hacking into media, tapping into media, perform imagery, because as you know, media are infrastructure, are technologies, are protocols, but also people, expectations, imagery, storytelling. This is media. This is what media is about. But then you realize around this time, 2009, 2010, that media were getting more and more complex in a way. And this work by Trevor Paglen was kind of actually blew our minds, because this guy actually climbed a mountain just to take a picture 30 miles away of a secret infrastructure of US government, a secret military base that was not charted anywhere. But he made some research. He was a geographer originally, so he knew it was there. And he took this picture and he said, okay, this is the best picture we can have this. This is a picture that tries to create an image, representation of something that is not representable. And so something clicked in our minds. We like, of course, outsiders. We had a bicycle gang here in Barcelona. We built actually tall bikes, crazy bikes. We had a fight among us without any type of permit, etc. This guy, the late Acorn, actually was an artist that for all his life tried to become a sculptor of radioactive material. We like this kind of outsiders, something that thinks out of any possible box. And we had Twitter trolls, of course, we had whistleblowers, etc. So, it's a massive festival. Sometimes you don't know, what is it about? Is it a new media festival? Yeah, of course. Is it a performance festival? As well. Is it a post-internet festival? Yes, as well. Good. We are not very fond of strict categories. All the disciplinary boundaries are useful, but sometimes we feel trapped by them, so we decide just to skip them, and they are quite useless. We are more interested in cracks into these boundaries. That's why all the old categories, when we started, for example, we were super fascinated by net art, or net.art, if you're familiar with that, in the late 90s. And back then, people used to say, oh, the real and the virtual, online and offline, well, the virtual communities, etc., etc. But in the first decade of the 2000, the year 2000, of course, the political scenario changed. Everybody was talking about art and politics, activism, artivism, you name it, creative activism. And we felt like all these distinctions were useless for us, because we're interested in something that could open up the field, not narrow down possibilities. That's not to say that everything is the same. Of course, art is not politics. Politics deals with self-organization, with something which is really necessary and hard to do, and you have to do it collectively, not just because you are an artist and you had a brilliant idea about changing the world order, because it's not going to happen. But then, sometimes when you mix up things, something interesting may happen. So, we were not very fond of categories, but yeah, while the years were passing after 2008, the big crisis, social media, Web 2.0, and blah, 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 we started to realize that the more we were interested in visibility, in hacking visibility, in tapping into data flow, the more things were like skipping out, like escaping our sight, actually. There was this double movement, in a way, towards extreme visibility and extreme invisibility. We were like trapped into a changing scenario. I tried to sum it up with some Meta Haven, this designer collective from Holland, image. There was a struggle going on. And so new categories probably were needed, or new focus was needed. And this struggle was a struggle between humans, of course, as always in human history, but it was also a struggle between humans and machines. Vastly complex infrastructure stack of layers, you know. But then again, you realize that there was a struggle between machines themselves, and humans were totally not necessary. We're very fond of hacker culture, you know. And hacker culture, beyond the mythical layer of it, can tell a lot of interesting story. Back in the 60s, the 70s, then the crypto, the cypherpunks, etc., etc. You know, people, individuals, more or less connected with other individuals, trying to understand the machine, understand something that is totally non-human, or at least non-human anymore. And that was fascinating because it gave us clues to understand what was going on, what is going on right now in the stack, in this stack of planetary computation, where we are just part, little part, larger part, of a big computational machine made of flesh, humans, and infrastructures, software, protocols, database, etc. So that's the little, you know, turn we are taking in these last few years. Yeah, I know. I'm reaching the end, actually. So I was just going to mention three like general concept or idea or fields we're very much interested in, especially in the last few years. Not that we are theoreticians. It's just some hot spot, what we think that they are hot spots. First, anonymity. The paradoxical collapse of identity in this planetary computation scale, but at the same time, the renewed strength of identity. You know, all authorities want us to have a very strict identity. Our identity is scattered all over the place, you know, as users. Our data are all over the place, it's a mess. But then, corporations and the state want us to connect all these pieces to a body, to be held accountable, you know. And so what's anonymity here? What's identity? And then what's a mass effect, what we call a mass effect of the intelligence of anonymous or pseudonymous or no identity, non-descript people all over the place, doing things, being clever, intelligent, and inventing things. What kind of user culture, folk culture, for example? How is this relevant for our own culture, the transmission of knowledge among people? And of course, this is the basis for citizenship and democracy, etc. This is the anonymity, identity, and mass effects. The first hotspot. Second hotspot, as I said, understanding the materiality of this planetary machine we are part of. Our bodies are part of this machine. Some parts of this machine are out of control of humans, are not meant to be understood by humans. Computers are talking, protocols are talking among themselves. Hacker culture, crypto cultures, etc., etc. Of course, hacktivism, digital rights advocacy can tell us a lot of things. And at some point you realize you're interested in art, but if you scratch that a little bit, you're interested in freedom, you know? And so who cares about museums? Who cares about galleries? Who cares about the history of art? You really care about liberty, freedom, and invention, and trying to break boundaries. And last hotspot is what I was mentioning, and I'm closing here: visibility and invisibility. And that's it's a binary distinction, and sometimes we're not comfortable with binary distinctions because they seem like too simple somehow. But still, when we were having fun with memes and user culture online, like this, the more we were interested in things like this, the more we realized that the dark side of it was interesting. The dark side meaning all the things that were not visible, the infrastructure, things you don't realize when you connect your mobile to the Wi-Fi, but also people invisible, and people that wanted to be invisible. So I'm closing, just mentioning it. I work with it. The excuse was an exhibition we made in Slovenia and Croatia last spring, and we published some sort of a companion to the exhibition. It's here. I don't have more copies, but I'll leave it here just for you to check. And I think I'm just reaching the end. Just to say that the next edition of the Influencers is taking place in Barcelona, October 22nd. We're going to release the first information next week. And this is the last image depicting the scenario I feel we are in nowadays. Thank you so much.